As we walk this path, as we come to know this path in a more intimate way, as we go from knowing this path, from hearing about it from others, as if someone we know told us about someone who we might like to become friends with. We heard about that person. To the point when we have practiced the path, it's like meeting the person. Then as we get to know this path in a more intimate way, becoming friends, we gradually come to terms with the simple fact that by doing mindfulness, we discover what it is. Sounds like such a simple sentence, perhaps. And yet, how many of us are confused about that? How many of us think that by hearing about it or intellectually understanding it, we'll learn what it is? Well, as we intimately come to know this path, we discover that by doing it, we come to know what it is. By actually doing it. And that's wonderful. That means that we've made friends with mindfulness. We're now buddies. What would it be like to be really good friends? That would mean that you and your buddy have really gone through some stuff together. When your buddy starts going through a hard time, your mindfulness practice gets a little weaker, it means you're there for her. You're there for her. You don't abandon her at that moment. You're there for her and you say, it's okay, we're gonna get through this. It's gonna be all right, I'm right here. Let's practice. And then we practice. Or you notice, you actually are willing to trust your friend enough to ask her for some help. Which means that when you're having a hard time, you could go to any number of various, quote, friends to get help, couldn't you? You go to television or alcohol or negative relationships, whatever it might be, whatever, quote, avoidant coping strategies we might have cultivated in our lives. We could go to that for help, but we've gotten to know the mindfulness buddy a little bit, and so we go to mindfulness and ask for help. We sit down and do the practice, actually do the practice, don't just sit down and think about practicing for half an hour and then get up. But we actually sit down and do the practice, and we find out, does she help or not? Can she really help or not? Well, to give her a chance. To give her half a chance, as we say. And so we learn to do that, and we gradually come to see something which at first we deeply don't want to see. And that is that if we're struggling and we just stay with this, results come. Now, why would it seems like that would be really good to find out, maybe. Well, wait a second. Why would you say we don't want to know that? It seems like the best possibility. You're having a difficult time, you stay with this, and then good things come. Insights arise. Happiness fills us. Why would you say that most of us don't want to know that? It's because most of us have a deep aversion to struggle. So this is why I like to do those media presentations, because at a time like this, when I'm concerned that some people are thinking something like, radio? I don't think so. But we do. You heard a story, many of you who are here, heard a story in which we have scientific proof. Put some kindergartners in a room with a difficult math problem, and 30 seconds later, they're not going to work on that anymore. 30 seconds later, walked away. Well, I'd suggest that that happens to us all the time in our mindfulness practice. We sit down, we're having a hard time. We do a technique for, say, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. Nothing seemed to come of it, and so we do something else. Maybe we get up and watch TV or drink some alcohol, but it's more likely that we'll keep on sitting there and trying to do something other than a technique. Like think ourselves to a solution of some kind. I'm gonna sit down and follow my breath. Well, 20 seconds have gone by and I still don't feel elated. So this isn't working. So I need to think up something. I need to think about the problem. I need to understand it. I need to find out how I'm going to deal with this. So as we become very intimate with this practice, we come to trust her, our buddy. We come to trust her enough to let her have a chance. It's just even a half an hour is for many of the issues, the deep insecurities that we're working to resolve in this path. Even a half an hour is a very short period of time. It really is. It's just half an hour. And so maybe we're not willing to give mindfulness a whole chance, but let's give her half a chance. Let's give her half an hour. And we actually do the technique for half an hour. And we notice the struggle that takes place because we don't want to struggle, we want to have a solution. We don't want the struggle, we want the resolution. And if the struggle is taking too long, then it isn't working, and so we're going to do something else that takes less struggle. We heard about the kindergartners who are given a difficult math problem that they can't solve, and in the United States, within 30 seconds, they've given up. In Japan, they don't give up, ever. They didn't give up. The scientists had other things to do. They needed to stop the study. They needed to go to dinner or something. The kids, not worrying about dinner. The kids just there trying to figure out this math problem that the scientists know that they will never figure out because they're kindergartners. It's much too difficult of a problem for them to figure out. But they're enjoying the struggle. They believe in the struggle. They don't resist the struggle. They actually celebrate the struggle. The struggle is what is celebrated. Why? Because of a deep distinction in the way we see ourselves. A deep distinction in the way we see ourselves in various cultures. And I'm suggesting that while yes, there are certainly enormous strengths in the Western culture, absolutely, I'm suggesting that we who lived in this Western culture for most of our lives, and I think most people here did, we've probably gotten those benefits by now. Decades after trying, we probably got a lot of benefits. And so I'm suggesting that we work on gathering a benefit from another culture, and that benefit is to shift our attention from the idea that I am what I am, which I'd suggest is from a certain perspective a relatively immature view, to I am what I do, which I'd suggest is a more mature view. From I am what I am to I am what I do. So what would be an example of this? Well, we heard about this. We heard that when a child in the West does well at something, then the parent explains that. The parent describes why. Why did you do well? Well, you did well because you're capable. You did well because you're smart. That's why. In other words, the results in your life come from who or what you are. You have the characteristic of smartness. Therefore, you did well. There are very significant problems with this explanation. Put bluntly, it's wrong. That's true. It's actually incorrect, and it's provably incorrect. It isn't that they were smart, and so something happened. It's that they did something. If they didn't do it, then the smartness wouldn't have been demonstrated in any case. The doing is absolutely essential there, and the doing is what produces the smartness. The doing is actually what's happening, and so we see that in Taiwan and also in Japan and China and Korea and such, there is a completely different emphasis put on it. A child does well. What's the explanation? The explanation is, you tried hard. You worked at it. You struggled. You gave it your time and your energy. That's why. It's not about you have such and such a characteristic. It's that you did such and such a thing. Now, when I was in school, I personally think of myself as someone without very much innate intelligence, but I did very well in school. Why? Well, I was a closet struggler. I didn't tell anyone about it because I knew that if you struggle in school, then that means that you're stupid. So I didn't want anyone to know that I'm stupid. And I found that if I didn't tell anyone how hard I was working, then they would just look at my grades and think I was smart, because I got very good grades. So I was tricking them. I was making them believe that I was smart, even though I knew that I was stupid. But I compensated for my innate stupidity through my work ethic, which was something to be ashamed of. So I carried a lot of shame around the fact that I worked hard in school. I only later discovered, once we were out of that stage, that my friends who did well also worked hard in school. They also lied and said that they didn't work hard. That was so interesting. My first clue, actually, I figured it out one day in my senior year of high school because I was studying for the SATs. And I figured out, I started to actually watch what was really happening. And I noticed that when you take a test, the whole class takes a test, and maybe if you finish taking the test, you can hand it in. You don't have to take all the time over the test. So I noticed in my 17-year-old analytical mind, however analytical 17-year-old mind is, in that level of analysis, I started to realize that if you took two measurements, how good are people's grades, and how long does it take them to hand in the exam, that the longer it takes someone to hand in the exam, in general, the better a grade they get. The people who didn't get a good grade handed in very quickly. The people who got a better grade tended, of course, not a perfect correlation, but I was 17, I was beyond needing perfect correlations in order to think that something's true. I started noticing that in general, the people who hand in the exam later do better. So what are they doing there? Are they enjoying taking the exam? Probably not. Probably not. What are they doing there for? Well, they're struggling. They're trying. They're working hard. They're checking their work. But to check your work means that you're willing to consider the possibility that you were wrong, which can be an unpleasant experience. And that's just what I was doing. So I started realizing, maybe it's the case that these people who I think are smart are actually stupid, but hard workers. That's possible, isn't it? That was very exciting to me, because it helped me to drop the amount of shame I had for trying hard. So I tell you all this because I want to encourage all of us to carefully examine, to be willing to struggle enough to carefully examine our own minds in order to discover whether we also believe that struggle indicates that something is going wrong. Does struggle indicate that there's a problem? If you're working really hard and failing, does that mean to you that there's a problem? Let's say that you're working as hard as you can to succeed as possible. You're putting all of your energy into something, and you're absolutely failing. What's your immediate emotional reaction to that? Please, carefully examine that. That's what I'm suggesting. Carefully examine it. Because there are two possible deeply immature views that we can take. One is, if I'm struggling, then things are going badly. If we hear the word struggle and we have an immediate, oh no, reaction, that is a deeply immature approach to this path. Because in this path, there's struggle. In this path, there's struggle. There just is struggle. That's just how it is. There just is struggle. It's okay. You don't have to panic. It's okay. Struggle doesn't have to be terrible. It doesn't have to be a curse. It can actually be quite exciting. Can't it? It's often exciting. For example, maybe you play a sport. Maybe you're a soccer player. Let's say you play soccer. And you play competitive soccer, say. Okay, who do you play competitive soccer with? 6-year-olds? No, that's not fun. There's no struggle. You can just beat them. Well, that's for some of us it seems to be. But for most of us, it's not fun. We want to compete against people who make it hard for us to succeed. That's what's fun. Fun is when it's difficult to succeed. Fun is actually when you try to succeed and don't know if you're going to. You might fail. That's what's fun. Or nowadays with movies, it doesn't really work anymore. But for a while, and in many cultures with movies, you don't know what's going to happen at the end. You don't know what's going to happen. That's what's fun about it. It's suspenseful. You don't know. Is this going to turn out well or terribly? Is it going to be a comedy or a tragedy? We don't know. That's what's exciting about it. You go to a movie because of that sense of suspense and excitement. So it can be fun to put ourselves into a position where we're asking a question like, where am I? And we really don't know the answer. And furthermore, we really don't know if we're ever going to know the answer. We don't know whether that answer is ever going to become clear, but we also know that it's of the utmost importance that we do find the answer. We realize that we must find the answer. If we don't have the answer to that question, then what can we do with our lives? How can we successfully live in an authentic way? If we can't even answer that question, then what question can we answer? So we see the absolutely essential nature of deeply, truly answering that question, and we don't know if we will ever find the answer to that question. And yet we throw ourselves in totally. That's the significance of the practice of struggle. And it comes to the point when we start to celebrate it. We start to celebrate struggle. So for me, one of the great transitions in my practice, I remember it very, very clearly. Many people practice and they really want a sense of deep peace and wisdom and love and such. So, you're suffering, you go into the practice, and you want to have the experience of love and wisdom and a relief from suffering and happiness and bliss and things like that. So that's what I wanted. I really wanted all that. For me, meditation from the beginning was very, very difficult. It was a huge struggle, terrible struggle. Some of you know about this. I've talked about it sometimes. It was just awful. Meditation for me was absolutely the least enjoyable thing I had ever done. It was a terrible, terrible experience. And so I wanted it to get better. I really wanted it to get better. I couldn't understand how sitting still for 10 minutes could be that bad. You're just sitting still. I sit still doing other things all the time. Sit still, watch TV for longer than 10 minutes, and it's fine. Sit still, eat a meal for half an hour, it's fine. Why is it that if I sit down and do this practice, it's terrible? I didn't know, but it was terrible. It was pure. It was, let's say you take anger, take your total experience, remove everything except anger and shame. That was my experience of meditation. That's it. You just have anger and shame filling your body, your mind for 10 minutes. That's a long 10 minutes. How about 20 minutes? That's a lot longer than 10 minutes. It was very, very difficult for me. So of course I wanted it to get better. And good news, it did. It got a lot better. It was great. And that's a very important step in the practice. It's really wonderful when that happens. But that isn't the step that I want to talk about tonight. There's a further step, which was an even more significant shift in my practice. And that was that I'd practice and practice and practice. I'd be pushing myself. And typically what would happen would be I'd be making effort, I'd be struggling, I'd be trying to work through something, I'd be trying to let go. I couldn't let go, have to hold on, and then I'd let go. And there'd be that sense that everyone wants of happiness and clarity and love and such. Wisdom. And the shift for me, the big shift was when I didn't stop there. When I didn't say, oh good, this is great, I'm going to stop here. It was when I pushed myself through that back into agony and confusion. Into the next deeper, because the agony and confusion had been clarified. So I needed to push down to the next level. And I noticed when I went back down into that next layer of agony and confusion, it's very strange to say this. I've actually never thought about it this way before, but there was an even deeper kind of happiness than existed in that state of bliss and wisdom. It's very, very subtle, but once I contacted it, it was even more, because it's a sense of an infused, an absolutely permeated sense of self-confidence. There's a deep sense of self-confidence that comes from having not just a sense of, okay, I'll work through struggle so that I can get to this other better thing. And we shift to, I have equanimity with struggle. I'll be okay if there's struggle forever. There's a deep sense of self-confidence that comes from that, which is actually more pleasurable than the sense, well, I'll work through the struggle until I get something better. But I need to get that better thing or else I'll never be really happy. But we don't know at the next level of agony and confusion whether it's ever going to break up. And furthermore, we start to notice that even when it does break up, we can just keep on going and we discover a new layer, an even deeper layer, an even more primitive layer. So if our happiness is dependent upon getting to the next place of clarity and happiness and love, then that's a limited kind of happiness. There's a limitation to that happiness. But if we notice that we can have equanimity with the struggle, then there's a taste of wonder in the struggle, which we get to experience. We get to be nourished by it. And that means that whether we're in agony or in happiness, we get to be happy. I have a happiness that's independent of those conditions. that gives us an enormous sense of self-confidence. Because it means that we no longer need to subtly guide our lives in order to subtly avoid the struggle as much as possible. In order to subtly avoid the struggle. There's I've forgotten his name. Oh no. Famous botanist. Forgot his name. A famous botanist who is famous because he had the quote straight line approach. Simple phrase, but this is what it means. It means that he plopped himself down in some location, in a forest, in a swamp or something, and he wants to get a completely unbiased sample of the vegetation in that environment. So the easiest way to do it, to be sure you're unbiased, is that you choose a straight line and you walk in that straight line no matter what. It doesn't matter what, you will not stop going in a straight line. And every plant that you come to, you write down and you classify. Well, it may seem simple in theory, but try it sometime. It's very difficult to walk in a completely straight line. And if you're against struggle, like walking straight through a lake, or walking straight up a cliff, if you don't want to do that, then you can't walk in a straight line. So he was famous because he made it absolutely rigorous, and he would go in a straight line. No matter what came up, he would walk in a straight line. And to the point that it was a little ridiculous, but it ended up meaning that his samples were the most accurate. And so, let's say we want to walk in our lives. We want to walk straight from here to living a life that is deeply fulfilling and beneficial for all beings, to our maximum potential. How can we most fully live in a way that's fulfilling to us and beneficial to others? Well, one way we could do it, to get there, is that we walk in a straight line. Of course, we need some sense of what that is. Okay, fine, let's set that aside. We have some sense of what it is for us. Anyway, there are other techniques for getting a sense of what that is. But right now, this technique is about learning how to walk in a straight line to that. Because as we start to go in that straight line, we find, oh, wait, here there's struggle. Maybe I'll try to go around that. And then we turn a little bit this way to avoid the struggle. Oh no, there's struggle there too. I guess I'll go this way. Okay, that's going well. Okay, oh no, there's struggle there too. I guess I have to go this way. And how long is it going to take us to get there? How long will it take us to get there? I have a friend who took a kayak down the Winooski. He was from Burlington, he drove, I think, 10 miles. And then 10 miles, and he got into the Winooski on his kayak. And he thought, well, the river is going at about 5 miles an hour, and I can speed it up by kayaking to 7 miles an hour. So I should get back in, 2 hours or something? Let's say 2 hours. It didn't take him 2 hours. I don't know if I did the math right, but it doesn't matter. Let's say it was 2 hours. He thought he could get back in 2 hours. Did it take 2 hours? No. Why? Because the Winooski River is not straight. It's much longer than he thought it was going to be. Because it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. In the same way, if we're starting here and come to the life of our dreams, what we want to live, but we don't go straight, well, I just have to be honest with you, there's no guarantee you're ever going to get there. Because that path can become infinitely long. Even though you feel like you're going there. Isn't it strange that 10 years later, we're still kind of far away somehow? And I suggest that the basic thing we have to learn how to do is how to walk straight. And the basic reason we don't do that is that we're trying to avoid struggle. We don't want struggle. We don't celebrate struggle. We are aversive. We actually hate struggle. We find struggle to be a source of anger, sadness, and shame. Now, if we have that attitude, it's very difficult to go straight. And so we have a technique, and it's called inquiry. And with that technique, we sit down and we ask a question. And we just ask that question until deeply, we don't know the answer. And we must know the answer. When we reach a place where we must know, and we don't know, that's the beginning of the technique. That's the beginning of becoming intimate with the beauty of this friend that we call mindfulness. So please give yourself a chance to struggle with our cultural assumptions about struggle, overcome them, and do so that we can come as quickly as possible to living a life that is deeply satisfying to us, deeply satisfying, and also deeply and truly, honestly, sincerely beneficial to the world.